is Jessica Welburn, and there's quite a write-up in the program, so I won't repeat all of that to you. But she is assistant professor of African American Studies and Sociology at the University of Iowa. I give you Jessica Welburn.
Ramos, who were shot and killed in New York City. But Flint, while it's several states away, could easily be somewhere in Iowa. Overall, African Americans in the state are significantly more likely to be poor, to be unemployed, and to have access to fewer resources than whites. This certainly could not have been the radical change that Dr. King hoped for. Third, as I mentioned, Dr. King was an advocate for equal access to health care, and for building strong, healthy communities. He talks specifically about women's health, something new that I learned. According to many sources, including the March of Dimes, the Center for Reproductive Rights, we find that in 2016, babies born to minorities are more likely to be born premature, women of color are more likely to die during pregnancy and childbirth. We also see higher rates of HIV and AIDS in Black communities, higher rates of diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, higher mortality rates, lower life expectancies. This could not have been the radical change that Dr. King hoped for. Fourth, last spring we witnessed what some have argued has been one of the more significant civil rights victories since Dr. King's time, with the legalization of same-sex marriage. We don't know where Dr. King stood on LGBT rights, but I think we can agree that regardless of personal beliefs or religious beliefs, Dr. King was concerned about equal rights for all and famously argued that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Many have argued as a result that he would have been proud of this step forward for the country. Yet, members of the LGBT community continue to face discrimination, exclusion, and violence, particularly persons of color. For example, the Center for American Progress finds that lesbian, gay, and bisexual adults have 40% higher unemployment rate than the population as a whole, and rates for LGBT persons of color, rates of high unemployment for LGBT persons of color are higher. Transgender individuals are twice as likely than cisgender individuals to be unemployed. Transgender people of color are 4 times more likely to be unemployed. Because it's currently legal in most states to discriminate against LGBT people, it is difficult to make progress in these areas. LGBT people are also significantly more likely to live below the poverty line and to be homeless. In addition, in 2015, a report by the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs finds that while overall there has been a decrease in hate crimes committed against LGBT persons, a significant increase in murders of LGBT people has been documented, and specifically hate crimes against transgender individuals. GLAAD reports that people of color are most likely to be the targets of these hate crimes. Just a few months ago, a Black transgender woman, Megan Taylor, was harassed by employees at a Des Moines hotel where she was visiting on her way to a funeral. They assumed she was a sex worker. She was arrested, taken to jail on suspicion of having illegal drugs because she didn't have her prescription for her hormone medication with her. She was strip searched and placed in solitary confinement for 8 days. All charges have since been dropped, and she has filed a lawsuit. This certainly could not have been the radical change that Dr. King hoped for. So I don't know if Dr. King would be proud. It is certainly true that we have made significant progress, but I can remain concerned about whether or not our society is ever capable of fully including people of color. However, we also know that Dr. King, the radical, was persistent. He never stopped working. So I'll engage in an exercise I also engaged in last year. I started to think about things that have given me hope over the past year, and things that should continue to give all of us hope as we fight for radical change. First, I found hope for radical change in the continued work of the Black Lives Matter movement. It continues to play a critical role in shaping our national dialogue about racial inequality, anti-Black violence, and mass incarceration. The organization was founded by 3 self-identified queer women of color, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrice Cullors. Despite claims by critics that the movement would have no staying power, over the past year, activists have met with presidential candidates and other political officials and have continued grassroots organizing efforts in cities across the country. While it is not always noticed, the movement has also been insistent that we focus on the value of all Black lives, including men and women, and also LGBT individuals. Their efforts have been so successful that it's difficult to find anybody in this country or beyond that has not heard the phrase Black Lives Matter. for radical change in the everyday actions of young people of color who have taken matters into their own hands. In part motivated by the success of the Black Lives Matter movement, we have seen young people of color engage in what started as small acts of resistance that have brought about significant institutional change. For example, University of Missouri graduate student Jonathan Butler, also my fraternity brother, just a shout out to Phi Beta Sigma, began a hunger strike in November to protest systemic racism at the University of Missouri. Butler was eventually joined by student staff and faculty from across campus. In response to the protests that he was also joined by the school's football team. In response to the protest, the school's president and chancellor eventually resigned. The protests themselves spread nationwide. Jonathan inspired students across the country, including at the University of Iowa where I work. I witnessed hundreds of Black students come together to demand that the staff, faculty, and administrators make efforts to curb institutional racism on campus. On another occasion, Bree Newsom climbed the flagpole in South Carolina at the Capitol and removed the Confederate flag. Her actions came in the wake of the murder of 9 African Americans at Emanuel AME Church in Charleston. While many around the state were calling for the flag's removal, Bree went the extra mile and climbed that flagpole and removed the flag. While it was replaced temporarily, eventually the state's governor called for the permanent removal of the flag at the Capitol, and today they celebrated their first MLK Day at the Capitol without the Confederate flag flying. Third, something a bit more personal, this fall I had the opportunity to meet Billie Avery, and for those who don't know her, she's a women's health activist who works tirelessly to ensure that women of color have access to quality health care. Avery has received numerous awards, including a MacArthur Genius Prize for her efforts. Her organization, the Black Women's Health Imperative, is the only national organization focused solely on Black women's health. They work with healthcare providers, researchers, community leaders, and women seeking to improve their health by focusing on several core areas, including access to healthcare, breast cancer, diabetes, heart disease, HIV and AIDS, reproductive health, and obesity. This year she gave me hope by showing me that Black women have the power to care for and take care of each other, even in a society where others may not care if we live or die. Fourth, I found hope for radical change in the work of our first African American president as he enters the final year of his second term. While progressives have debated the impact that some of his policies have had on African Americans, I look beyond his policies to find hope in his mere existence. To see President Obama and his family photographed in the White House is a constant reminder that in the face of insurmountable odds, Black success and Black joy are possible and they exist. As I watch his family travel the world, I am constantly reminded that my people are more than this moment, we are more than the narrow existence that the U.S. has tried to create for us. While these are just a few examples, they do give me hope that the radical change that Dr. King desired is possible. However, it requires that we all be committed to radical systemic change. Days of service, church services, and speeches once a year to honor his legacy are not enough. We must be constantly willing to demand more of ourselves and refuse to be satisfied with the status quo. And so while I cannot be satisfied with our current circumstances, I can be hopeful because, as Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Thank you.